This is the Palin Update on SARA-NET Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
I have said all along that America is based on Judeo-Christian beliefs, and nobody has to believe me, though. You can just go to our Founding Fathers' early documents and see how they crafted a Declaration of Independence and a Constitution.
Traditional American values, what our country was founded on. But the secular movement is louder and more active than ever. While leaders like Governor Palin continue to fight for our core principles, others are also promoting values that created and preserved our nation and our prosperity for over 2 centuries. Today, we're joined by Rev Lou Sheldon, chairman of the Traditional Values Coalition, to get his take on values in America and his thoughts on Governor Palin. Do you stand with Rand? Sarah Palin sure does. And this past week, the governor offered support to Senator Paul as he filibustered for a half a day in D.C., a historic day and night for liberty. Governor Palin congratulates her daughter Willow and 2 of Willow's friends. We'll tell you why. And a big speech from Sarah Palin in the Sunshine State. Plus, our latest edition of Steel Resolve with Sarah Steelman is straight ahead. First, we are pleased to be joined by the chairman of the Traditional Values Coalition, which he founded in 1980. TVC represents more than 43,000 churches across the United States and promotes pro-family legislation and policy. Reverend Lou Sheldon, welcome to the Palin Update on SARA-NET Radio.
Happy to be with you.
You've been an enthusiastic supporter of Sarah Palin for years. You pretty much agree with the governor on almost all fronts.
Absolutely. Just wish the state would have defended her better and that she didn't have to resign as governor with all those false accusations that had to be cleared up. And they were all cleared up, you know. So history will do her well. She'll be a great idol.
They absolutely were, and if you remember, it's an interesting topic you bring up. Remember, when the accusations were flying around, they were front-page news. But when she was cleared, where was that? Way in the back of the paper, right?
Well, that's the mentality and the DNA of the liberal press. They don't want to tell the truth. They just want to tear down and be prophets of doom. They cannot deal with the fact that some people have found the truth, and they know how to say it in a very rational and positive manner.
What is it about Governor Palin specifically that caught your eye when she hit the national scene, and also with some of the unfair treatment that's been leveled against her that you mentioned?
Well, basically, she's a wonderful, wonderful person in her own right. She's an outstanding mother and a quite committed and devoted wife. So I think it's so important to understand this is why she had such huge crowds. I mean, she was drawing better than John McCain. I attended a lot of those rallies in different parts of the country, especially when I was here in Southern California, and she came into the stadium where we had about 20-some thousand people, just jammed. And from experience, I knew that I needed to get there early, and I did.
Absolutely, and these crowds continue. We saw what she drew at CPAC 2012, and she's slated to speak there again. And, you know, in Florida this past week, people still clamoring to hear that common-sense conservative message. And I know that's a message that you've delivered for quite some time now, Reverend. Your Traditional Values Coalition still going strong. You founded the organization over 3 decades ago. Tell our listeners what TVC is all about.
Well, TVC started because in Orange County, California, where I live and was living then, churches who were just start-up churches could not stay in a rented facility if it was a public school for more than 6 months. Well, when you're trying to build a congregation from start, very hard to keep moving and keep your people with you. So they came to me and asked me, as they knew I had a great political interest, would I go to Sacramento? So I went up to Sacramento, found a legislator that was very sympathetic. His name, he's now Congressman Ed Royce from Orange County. and he carried a piece of legislation, a Senate bill. He was a state senator, Senate Bill 521, which said churches could use school facilities for reasonable prices, and they could do it during non-instructional hours, meaning on Saturdays or evenings, or of course Sundays, morning and evening. And we got that passed overwhelmingly. That was my first initial thing in terms of lobbying. And from that, a number of other issues arose, the right to life issues, the gay agenda issues, and we just stayed at it. And then around and this was, in the early 80s, then about 1990, I was encouraged to go to Washington and do national issues. And the first national issue we did was the right for public schools that receive federal money to have Bible study during non-instructional hours on their own, meaning like during the lunch hour or before school or after school, and they could use a school facility. And that was one of them. And then, of course, along came the issue with concerning Lyndon Baines Johnson, who in 1954 got into a big fight with the Hunt brothers of Texas, who made their first billion in silver and then lost it in silver. And they were accusing him of being very, very soft. This was in the early 50s, soft on communism. So he was a very vindictive man. He said, I'll fix them. So he found, as the majority leader of the United States Senate and a senator, he had been elected by barely 100 votes in 1948. So he was up for re-election in 1954. And then what he did was he found this very insignificant Ways and Means bill, and he took it and was able to convince the author of it to let him have it. And what he did was he never put it in print, he never had a hearing, and it never had a clear vote. Because what he did was he put it on the consent calendar, and in it said that no 501c3, because the Hunt brothers were using their C3 to really go after Lyndon Baines Johnson. So from a vindictive viewpoint, he put this bill across. It was passed on the consent calendar, which means it was along with about 20 other bills naming post offices, naming bridges where federal money had been spent. So it said that no 501c3 can say anything, can write anything, can teach anything, can preach anything, can be interpreted as electing or defeating a candidate. Well, this year, Congressman Walter Jones, this now House Bill number 127, they're going to repeal it. And I pray we can get it through the Senate, because that will mean that churches and other C3 organizations, which are tax deductible, will have the same rights as unions. Now, a lot of churches may not choose to have a political activism, but I know there are many that are very concerned about it, especially with all the things that are coming out of the White House now against the role of religion in shaping the American culture, American life.
A lot of the issues Traditional Values Coalition fights for have been big in the news of late. Marriage, the attack on Judeo-Christian values, life issues. It must be an all-day, everyday effort for you to try to deal with these House members and senators. What's the response like nowadays? I know we have some great conservatives like Ted Cruz and others in D.C., but we also have a lot of far-left liberals.
Yes, we have a very good, solid group of conservatives in the House of Representatives. In 2010, we took the House back in the conservative column, and there was over 87 Republicans elected, which gave us a significant majority. We lost a few seats in this past fall in the election, in the 2012 election. But we still have control, and that's what counts. We got about a 20-vote margin. It remains to be seen what's going to happen in November of 2014, both in the House and in the Senate. But what our concern is, there's been a huge loss. Already the California State Legislature has introduced a bill that says if you, and this is for the state level, if you have a Boy Scout troop in your church, you could lose your tax exemption. Well, I'm convinced the bill is unconstitutional because Congress says, it says in the Constitution, Congress shall make no laws. That applies to the states, too. No law respecting an establishment of religion or denying the free exercise thereof. And if a church wants to be, this could be a Roman Catholic church, this could be a Protestant evangelical church, or a classical Pentecostal church. They decide to have a Boy Scout troop. This law would say, hey, we're going to challenge your tax exemption at the state level. So they have a supermajority now in the California State Legislature, which can trump any kind of a veto. But these are the issues we deal with on a daily basis: the right to life issues, the marriage of one man, one woman issue, lower taxes, and we've been able to uncover over $500 million worth of waste in the Institute for National Health. How many drinks does it take? One particular grant gave to the Hunter College in New York City. How many drinks does it take for one homosexual to seduce another? That was $250,000 for a 3-year grant. Every year they'd get $250,000. So that comes to $750,000. I mean, we're working real hard now with the budget chairman, Paul Ryan, and to show him all this kind of money in the National Institute of Health. Much of it is unnecessary. We need research for cancer and for arthritis and Alzheimer's and many of the other diseases that afflict many of our senior citizens. Not how many drinks does it take for one gay to seduce another.
Yeah, the waste is unbelievable. We've heard all of these crazy projects where money is going. People, these small state projects, these earmarks that Congress keeps bringing back to their districts, and people just not knowing about it. You need to bring these up more. Now, your daughter does a lot of work for TVC. You must be proud of Andrea Lafferty.
Very proud of Andrea Lafferty.
And she's been out front trying to stop the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. Can you tell us what that is?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, how are the efforts going
that
there?
bill now, I would say for at least, they pushed it before we took over the Congress in 1994. And we stopped it then, and then we stopped it 2 years ago when the Democrats, liberals took control of the Congress in, I think, 2006. And then we got the Congress back in 2010. Yes, she's worked very hard on that particular issue. That would mean that a transgender could teach in any public school that receives federal money. This is why we can't have that bill.
How can people learn more about TVC, Reverend?
Well, just go to our website, which is traditionalvalues.org. You can join from the website.
Okay, sounds good. Now, I know, Reverend, along with Scripture, of course, you like to quote George Washington in his farewell address. He said, of all the dispositions and habits that lead to political prosperity, the two indispensable supports are religion and morality. Still hold true?
Oh, yes, absolutely, 100%.
And this is a president. I mean, this is a president of the United States who said this. Could you imagine Barack Obama ever mentioning religion and morality at the end of a speech?
No. And, then John Adams, the second president of the United States, said, this Constitution was written only for a religious and moral people. It is unfit for any other. And with all these social issues, it's totally in the hands of the any others.
You know, we see the great candidates that Governor Palin endorsed recently, like Ted Cruz, like Deb Fischer, like some of the new Senate members and House members, Ted Yoho and Paul Gosar. Is Governor Palin and the types of people she endorses, is that what we need in this country now more than ever as leaders when it comes to a traditional values perspective?
Absolutely. If we do not have these kinds of people, then the wear and tear by the secular, godless emphasis that continually come up. See, they believe in the big lie, the separation of church and state. And nowhere does our Constitution say that. So this is why we've got to have more of the Marco Rubios and the Ted Cruzes, and there's a great guy in the House, Louis Gohmert, and many others, a whole list of others. This new person from Arkansas, Congressman Cotton, is another example of a person who is constitutionally based and spiritually, principally based.
Well, it gives us hope looking forward to those midterm elections. Reverend Lou Sheldon, thank you, sir, for taking some time to visit with us today.
Well, thank you, and watch out for those weathermen, that missed the mark.
I know, the big violent storm that never was this past week, right?
And that's right, they went way up north.
Yes, it did. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, and God bless you in your work and your ministry.
And that TVC website, once again, traditionalvalues.org. Finally, a little leadership in Washington. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul this past week demanded answers from President Obama regarding the use of drones to kill Americans on U.S. soil during a filibuster that lasted better than 13 hours. Sarah Palin praised Paul's efforts, saying she's proud to stand with Rand since 2009. And she told the GOP, we need more leadership like this. Some of the other senators to participate in the historic night with Paul included Ted Cruz of Texas, Marco Rubio of Florida, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, South Carolina's Tim Scott, Jeff Flake of Arizona, and South Dakota's John Thune. All of these men have enjoyed a Sarah Palin endorsement in recent years. Well, this past week, Governor Palin congratulated her daughter, Willow, and some of Willow's friends. The governor saying she's proud of Willow and her Alaska pals, Sarah and Kelsey, who are both Northern Arizona University students studying special education. Go Lumberjacks. The three girls raised funds to show respect for those with special needs. Palin says these three teens have hearts for those who face greater challenges than most of us will ever face. Their sincere efforts to embrace and support innocent lives is inspiring. Governor Palin also said she's blessed to have them spend their precious time with Trig. Their friendship with our little boy gives me great hope for America's next generation of leaders. The words of Governor Palin. Now, Palin also posted a nice photo of Willow with her friends, as well as some recent pictures of little Trig, who she says is thriving. Palin calls her youngest child rowdy, curious, fun, challenging, and beautiful. What a great sentiment. Governor Palin spoke and answered some questions at Southeastern University's annual leadership forum this past week. She told students to do what others won't and encouraged those in attendance to cling to God, guns, and the Constitution. Governor Palin urged the crowd to not allow faith to be pushed to the margins of our culture. Another important message from Sarah Palin. Now, our weekly commentary, Steel Resolved. Here's Sarah Steelman.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank goodness for Senator Rand Paul, a true patriot and statesman. It does my heart good as an American for someone who is elected to have enough passion and guts to stand up and defend our precious Constitution. Senator Rand Paul brought attention to the fact that President Obama was unwilling to say no to the use of drones to kill Americans on American soil. I will say it again. Thank goodness for Senator Paul's and his willingness to do what every senator, Republican or Democrat, should have done. He used the filibuster to not only bring attention to the issue, but to have a public discussion about it on the floor of the United States Senate, which is so important to our ability to govern ourselves. Transparency in government is what ensures our ability to hold our elected officials accountable. We have a lazy press and a president who conducts meetings in secret along with Congress. So it is absolutely refreshing for Rand Paul to take the floor of the Senate and fight for what is right. And he used his power as a member of the minority to get answers, which is the way the filibuster is supposed to work. If every important issue were debated on the floor of the Senate, with reasonable arguments presented and with every senator seated in the chamber listening and participating, our government might just be more effective. This is Sarah Steelman for SarahNet Radio.
Tune in again next week for another segment of Steel Resolve right here on the Palin Update. And don't forget, the Palin Update, including Steel Resolve, is now on demand and available for download. So just head to SarahNetRadio.net, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio. Visit SarahNetRadio.net for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. And follow along on Twitter at SarahNet Radio, at Kevin Scholla, and at Sarah_Steelman. Also, we're on Facebook, so be sure to like SarahNet Radio and like Kevin Scholla. Also, Palin Patriots, a new series of articles written by Palinistas, is available at SarahNet.net. Some great stuff from Bader Carmouche, Dan Bongino, and Martha Zoller thus far. For some common sense perspective, check out Palin Patriots at SarahNet.net. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Just go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I want to thank Sarah Steelman and everyone here at SarahNet Radio. Thanks to Rev Lou Sheldon. And thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.